Hello students, welcome to my channel Maths with Panu. Today we are discussing Gauss siedel method of matrices. Let's start. For this method, we take three linear equations in three variables x1, x2 and x3. Here you can write given equations are 2x1 minus x2 plus 0x3 is equal to 7 minus x1 plus 2x2 minus x3 is equal to 1, and the third one 0x1 minus x2 plus 2x3 is equal to 1. Now, these three equations can be written as, like, from the first equation, we take the value of x1 because in our first equation, we see that largest coefficient is 2, coefficient of x1, because we have three variables x1, x2 and x3, and you can see that largest coefficient of these three variables is 2. So students, we can find the value of x1 from our first linear equation. So we can find the value of 2x1. Take the x2 on the right side, you get 7 plus x2, and in this way we get the value of x1. Now from the second equation, minus x1 plus 2x2 minus x3 is equal to 1. Largest coefficient is 2 of x2. So we can find the value of x2 from this equation. And in the same way, from the third equation, the largest coefficient is also 2 of x3 variable. So we can find the value of x3. I repeat, we can find the value of x1 from our first equation, x2 from our second equation, and x3 from our third equation. Now our next step is, we have to apply our first iteration process. For this, from the equation third, we named our three equations third, fourth and fifth. You can see on the last pages like this. We can name this equation as equation number third, this is equation number 4, and this is equation number 5. Now we move on our next step. First of all, we put the value of x2 and x3 initially 0. This is our first step. So we take the value of x1 and we write it x1 to the power 1. This one shows our first iteration process, and we put the value of x2 in this equation. 7 plus 0, we get 7 upon 2, and by dividing we get our answer 3.5. Now we move on our next step, and in the same way, from the equation fourth, we get x2 1, and we put the value of x1. You can see the value of x1 is equal to 3.5. We put this value in our next equation, and we put the value of x3 is equal to 0. By solving it, we get 2.25. In the same way, in the x3, we put the value of x2 1. 1 plus 2.25, we get the value of 3.25 upon 2 is equal to 1.625. So in this way, we complete our first iteration process. Now we move on our second iteration method. For this, first of all, we denote our second iteration like this. We write here x1 to the power 2. And in the third equation, as previous, we put the value of 0 in the place of x2. Now we put the value of x2 1. That is 2.25. You note it? In the first iteration, we put the value of x2 is equal to 0. When we derive our first iteration, we use the initial value. But now, if we want to derive our second iteration process, then we put our previous value 2.25 in our next step. Then we get 9.25 upon 2 and so on. Now we move on x2, and in the same way you can use the equation from here. You can see 1 plus x1 to the power 1 plus x3, and you put these values. You can see 1 plus x1 to the power 2, x1 to the power 1. I repeat, 1 and 2 suffixes only denote our second and first iteration value. So we put these values and we get the answer 3.625. And in the same way, you can find the value of x3. We write here 1 by 2, 1 plus x2 to the power 2. And you put the value of x2 second iteration. From the second iteration, you get the value of x2, that is 3.625. By solving it, you get the answer. So students, you repeat this process up to third iteration. You can ask on any time. Third iteration, we use the values of second iteration, and in the same way you can find the value of x1 to the power 3, x2 to the power 3 and x3 to the power 3. So this is your Gauss siedel method. In many times in the question paper, we can ask, you can solve this method by exact solution also. So, let me see how we can solve this method by exact solution. For this, we solve these three equations as usual. You can use any method of the 10th standard also. For example, we take this equation 2x1 minus x2 is equal to 7, and you can find the value of x2. You take the value of x2 on the right side. Then put the value of x2 in third equation. You can see in your previous notes, x2. We put the value of x2 in this equation as we put in elimination method in 10th standard. So after solving it, you can take the sign minus within the braces and you can change the sign of these digits, and we get this equation. Divided by minus 2, we get x1 minus x3 is equal to 3, and we can find the value of x3 from this equation. After that, you can name it star and double star. We get the value of x2 in the form of x1 and we get the value of x3 in the form of x1. So we put these two values in our next equation. You can say second equation. So after putting the values, we get the final value of x1 in the form of constant. Now we put the value of x1 in this equation and we get the value of x2. After that, we put the value of x1 and x2 in our this equation and we get the value of x3 also. So in this way, we can solve these three equations and we get the value of x1 is equal to 6, x2 is equal to 5, x3 is equal to 3. And you can verify your answer by putting these values in any of the equation. So we can see here we get the exact solution. But in Gauss-Seidel method, you are near about the answer. When you are